The views expressed on the Jerry Cahill CF podcast are that of Jerry Cahill and guests, and not necessarily those of the Boomer Esiason Foundation. Nothing on the Jerry Cahill CF podcast should be considered medical advice. Such advice can only be given by a physician who is experienced with cystic fibrosis. The Boomer Esiason Foundation, Jerry Cahill and guests cannot be held responsible for any damage which may result from using the information on this podcast without the permission of your medical doctor. You're listening to the Jerry Cahill CF podcast presented by the Boomer Esiason Foundation and jerrycahill.com.
Welcome to Jerry Cahill's Living, Breathing, Succeeding podcast series presented by the Boomer Esiason Foundation. This show, CF Modulators a Decade Later, has been made possible with financial support from Mylan Pharmaceutical. Today you'll meet Emily Schaller from Grosse Pointe, Michigan. Emily is 38 years old and grew up playing sports and played the drums in a rock band. Emily started her own 501c3 foundation, Rock CF, in 2007. Rock CF Foundation is dedicated to increasing the quality of life for people with cystic fibrosis and giving back. Emily is passionate about running and biking, being compliant to her therapies, healthy living both mentally and physically, and the power of exercise. So, for everybody out there, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So I was born in 1982. And my mom, when she helped me for the first time, could just sense something was wrong, but nothing struck the doctors right away. So they said, she's an adorable baby, take her home and love her. And I have two older brothers who do not have CF. So the first few months of my life, my digestion was crazy and I had ear infections and runny noses. So over time, my parents noticed something wasn't right. So after 2 sweat tests, I was finally diagnosed with CF at 18 months. And now I'm 38 and rocking and rolling, baby. When I was diagnosed at 18 months with CF, we didn't know anybody else around with CF. We'd never heard of it, no family history, but my parents got the prognosis that I probably wouldn't live long enough to graduate from high school. And I think they sat with that for about a week and cried and went through the whole emotional process. But then they were like, no, she's going to be just like every other kid. I played outside with my brothers, always skateboarding and playing basketball and football and baseball, and only inside when my parents would have to pound me and do chest PT. I mean, this was pre-Pulmozyme, pre-other CF medications, right, as you know. So the only thing I had to do was take enzymes, and my parents would have to do manual chest PT, but I was a super active kid, and I think that's what led me to a relatively healthy childhood. As I got older, especially middle school, high school, exacerbations started to pop up more and more to like 2 times a year, maybe 3 times a year, and then I watched my lung function start to decline. And then, when I was in my early 20s, I started a rock band with 4 of my friends, an all-girl band called the Helen. That's when my lung function was really at its worst. I wasn't exercising, playing drums in smoky bars, staying out late, overindulging, and partying a little too much. And I realized one day that that's probably not the best thing for me. And that's when I kind of transitioned to focus on exercise and running. Treatments really started coming out when I was 13, so Pulmozyme, and then I was on a clinical trial for Toby, so always involved in clinical trials growing up. And one night I attended the CF Education Day at my children's hospital that I used to go to, and the research coordinator came running up to me. She's like, Emily, you qualify for this trial. It's a phase 2 trial out of Cleveland. You'll have to drive there like every 7 days. So I literally drove from Detroit to Cleveland about every 7 to 10 days for this clinical trial. And at the time it was for VX770, which is now Kalydeco. And I had no clue what this was. And then phase 3 rolls around out of my CF Care Center in Michigan. And I said, I'll do it again because I like clinical trials. I like to help advance science. And this one was a little different. I mean, really, within 4 days of starting this clinical trial and the phase 3 trial, I felt as if somebody flipped a switch on the back of my head and said, okay, Em, this is how you should have been feeling the last 28 years of your life, right? I could take a deep breath. The mucus in my lungs essentially disappeared. And all of this was in like 7 days. Side effects were positive, like I could breathe. My sinuses cleared up like immediately, and I'd had like probably a dozen to 15 sinus surgeries in the past, and sinuses cleared up. My lung functions went to the highest I could ever remember it being. And so for the first year and a half, I felt untouchable. Like, take out my port. I don't need my port anymore. I'm never going to be in the hospital again. But that changed, that mindset changed, because reality kind of hit me back in the face that I still have CF. Definitely still diligent, just like I was before, because I've had my lung function drop a couple times during the past 10 years, and it's scary. I mean, I like to say my worst times now are my best times pre-Kalydeco, like the way I feel. But still, like, there's times where I'm coughing up blood still and coughing up a ton of mucus, and I'm like, okay, well, yes, I still need to do all my treatments for sure. My lung infections, they used to be about 2 or 3, maybe 4 times a year before I started exercising and running. With that, kind of pushed it off to once every year to every year and a half, exercise alone. But since Kalydeco, it's about it used to be every 2 to 3 years, but now I'm back to like once every year or so. My gene mutations are G551D, which is exactly what Kalydeco was designed for. And then Del-T1078, which is a class 1, I think. So I don't qualify for any of the other 3 modulators. And there were discussions about maybe me entering a clinical trial for Trikafta, but obviously with what's going on, a lot of the research has been halted. So I would definitely like something better than Kalydeco. I mean, I'm happy and like beyond lucky to be able to have been on Kalydeco for so long and have experienced the benefits that I have, like buying a house and a retirement fund and working full time. But I think there's some better stuff out there too.
What's next for you, Emily? I mean, you're on the Kalydeco. You're an old pro at the modulators now, over 11 years. So you're looking for the next new improved modulator.
I don't know. It might not even be a modulator. It might be something else. And that's the thing, is like, we don't really know the long-term effects of modulators and these drugs, because I'm one of the longest running people on modulators, along with others that may have started Kalydeco in the clinical trials. And who knows the long-term effects of these. So I would be cool with some new treatments coming out as well that we can take that might bump up the PFTs a little bit higher and get rid of that pesky Pseudomonas, Kalydeco was just like 1,200 people or so could take it when it was approved. And now we have Trikafta and the other modulators that open it up to almost 90%, right? And I've seen reactions all over the board from people that are like, I have this drug now, I'm golden, I don't need to do anything else, to people on the other end of the spectrum, like, I have this drug and I'm gonna work my butt off because I'm so lucky that I have this drug, so I'm gonna exercise more than I ever have. I'm still gonna do my treatments and remain compliant because we have to. I mean, I've learned through 10 years that I still have to do all this stuff. The 10% or so that is still left without a modulator treatment, I mean, these are our friends. These are the people we've been fundraising for decades. I mean, since I was a kid, we were fundraising for everybody. And now it's like, my friends don't have access to the drugs that I've had access to for 10 years. So there's a little bit of survivor's guilt with me for, being able to live this long with the modulator, and my friends still don't have it. So I think I would just say, don't give up and keep working. We've been there. I mean, all of us, especially people in the 50s and 60s, were without a modulator or some form of treatment for decades, right? So keep pushing. Know that people are working for a treatment for the extra group of our friends who don't have a treatment, and just exercise and stay focused, right? I've never been happier, man. It's crazy. I mean, every day I wake up, still 11 years later, I'll wake up and like take a deep breath and go, wow, like this is amazing. Like, in a house that I bought, which I never thought I'd buy a house, right? So I own a house, and I have to, after this, go cut my grass and weed whip. Like, I'm living life, man.